Welcome back to the Earth Medicine podcast. I'm Laurel, your host, and we have somebody who has meant a lot to me in my life in recent years. He mentored me and taught me so much. It's Tome Blue, and I wanted to take my time introducing him because I learned something new today from him, which is how they actually identify themselves within a tribe. So I would like to do my best to introduce him as he fits in the social ecosystem of his nation. Tome Blue is of the Muscogee Nation, and he was born into the Little Bear family. And seven families make a band, and he is in the Eufaula band, which means rising or soaring eagle. Seven bands make a clan, and his clan is the Wind Clan. And seven clans make a tribe, and his tribe is the Anakusi, which means peaceful people. And seven or more tribes make a nation, and he is of the Muscogee Nation, and they are actually 40 tribes. And Muscogee means people that care for the forest. What a beautiful, beautiful lineage. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure always
Yeah.
to be in your presence. Mm.
Aw. So you have been busy since the last time we spoke. I was aware and in support of the Earth Keepers One Tribe Trading Company, where you make plant medicine available for
Mm.
people. But you also are now a published author with a book, The Great Remembering. And it's
Mm.
the tagline, I love your tagline, if you can call it that, that we're all the product of a thousand love stories.
The
Did I
result,
get that
yeah,
right? Result of a thousand love stories.
that
So
took
thank
place in
you
a
so.
little piece of heaven, is what I say. The result of thousands of love stories that took place in a little piece of heaven.
Mm.
I like that because once upon a time, this province of the southeastern portion of Turtle Island was called a little piece of heaven
Mm.
by the native people that lived here. Because you imagine millions of people all waking up in the morning thinking they're in heaven. I love it.
And could you explain to the listeners where Turtle Island is in terms that they would know on a U.S. map?
Oh, that's what once upon a time. That's what this place was called. They call it the United States of America now. It's been incorporated into a colonized uh, entity. But once upon a time, it was called Turtle Island, and it was the home, to all these indigenous people. If you take into account the fact that we all thought Canada and Mexico and Central America and South America was all part of the same uh, life form, different tribes, different plants, but it was all one thing. And so the people of this place was the 6,000 different tribes and about 600 different nations, of people who actually kind of co-created a democratic kind, and I don't think that's the word they used, but it was mutual respect, mutual dignity, mutual compassion, care. It's like if the whole place from northern Canada down to the tip of South America, all the indigenous people thought of themselves as shepherds and stewards and caregivers. And so it was a beautiful time. But not unlike stories, when they tell you a story and they say, and these people lived happily ever after, the end. And I'd say, no, that's just the beginning. And so, but for thousands of years, peace prevailed. So nobody really wrote about it. It just happened. And as soon as something happened horrible, all of a sudden history was made. So, then even if you fight every 300 years, after 1,000 years or 2,000 years, they'll say, well, you were a warlike people because we fought every couple of hundred years. But this is not what we focus on as indigenous people. We focus on caring for the place. That was the main thing. Yeah.
It was amazing to discover that your grandfather was actually on the Trail of Tears.
My great grandfather.
Your great grandfather.
Yeah, but he lived to be 120. So even though he was born in 1837, he died in 1954.
Mm.
Yeah, and I was 8 years old at the time, so I heard a lot of stories. Mm.
We're sponges at that age.
Yeah, I mean, I used to sit at his feet and listen. I mean, he was a talker, kind of like me, or I'm like him. Just tell the stories.
Yeah. Well, given that this is the Earth Medicine podcast, I would love to ask you the question. Um, and it's a broad topic because I want you to be able to bring forth whatever pops into your heart to share. But what is the Indigenous view of Earth medicine? And what are the different modalities? And is there a hierarchy or is it a different structure?
Well, I guess in no particular order of significance, we would say that one of the fundamental realities is that we are not separate from the earth. We are of the earth. You could say we don't walk through nature. We are nature. We breathe the same air. We drink the same water. We respond to the same moon. We all depend on 12 inches of topsoil and the fact that it rains. So our interaction and relationship with our mother and all of her children is through the music. So we learn the songs of the plants, we learn the songs of the mycelium, we learn the songs of the trees, we listen to the birds. One of the things you notice once you get out into the woods, if you hang around a while, is that when the birds sing, various flowers open in response to the bird songs. And when those flowers respond to the bird songs by opening up, the music that is released from that open flower sings and beckons to the pollinators. So then it attracts the honeybees and the butterflies, and so the whole place is just like singing to itself in order to respond and interact in a way that keeps the sweet dream of life alive and well. Yeah, that's kind of our approach.
You had once told me about pollen and how pollen was from the stars.
Yeah, we call it freeze dried starlight. Well, when the light is the formation of what we think of as the appearance of this sweet dream. It takes, like humans can only see a small percentage of the light spectrum. I think it's 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum of light. It's called the optical range. And for the optical range to become apparent to our vision, 500,000 units of radiation of light has to enter it. And that gives it visibility in the optical range, which is the only one we can see. There's no telling what's available in the ultraviolet range or the micro range or the gamma ray, all these other light. But in the optical range is the one we pretty much depend on to keep us from getting run over when we all gather at the same red light. So it's an interesting phenomenon. So light has no timeline. It just is. So one of the things that's subtle, I think, in a lot of ways, but meaningful also, they say, it takes 8 minutes from the light of the sun to reach the earth. And our people would say, no, it's always here. It just takes us 8 minutes to see it. It's not light that's orchestrating the time, it's us. And so we have a timeline, but light doesn't. But most of the Native American people from a time once upon a time, a long time ago in a land far away, we didn't measure our lives by time spent. We measured it by distance traveled. And so we understand that the earth is moving through space at unprecedented speeds. And that's what matters. And the moon, that's what matters. And the stars, that's what matters. The 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock didn't have any meaning. You can say, well, I'll see you in 2 moons. I'll see you when the moon is full. I'll see you when there's no moon. So the distance of these things determined different aspects of your journey, the interludes and such. And so bee pollen is energy and information. So we think that's what the lights from the stars are sending us is energy and information. And we're thinking it's a song. Somebody thought about it when they called it the universe. That translates into one song, universe. And so the whole stars are singing, the galaxies are singing, everybody's singing. And so they're singing. So the trees, the leaves of the trees pick up that light and they send it down through the sap, the energy, the information, so that Earth can replicate itself in its own image every day. Otherwise, imagine how chaotic it would be if we weren't getting that consistent, perpetual energy and information being sent to us by these stars. Pine trees continue to be pine trees, oak trees continue to be oak trees. They don't change their minds overnight. You know what I mean? They consistent. It's persistent. Now over the length of the journey, we don't know what kind of interesting places we're moving through. 68,000 miles an hour, a million miles every day. We don't know about the cosmic storms and the various phases and dimensions and time warps and all the things that we're going to. So we don't know exactly how to measure that or judge that or grade that or interact with that. So we keep it simple. We learn the songs of the trees, we learn the songs of the flowers, we learn the songs of the animals, the songs of the water, the songs of the stones. So when that energy and that information identifies itself, it goes into the roots of the trees. The roots of the trees deliver it to the mycelium. Mycelium take it everywhere. And this all happens instantly. I mean, in just a second. And so we really believe and feel this is true. If one tree knows you, all trees know you. If a bear sees you in the woods, all bears know what you look like because they're all connected in that sphere, in that realm. We're the ones who get confused and try to separate everything and catalog everything. Everybody else is just in one thing, in one place, doing one thing on one planet with one mother, with one life to live. So pollen carries two laws that we think, if those two laws were carried out, that the world would be a beautiful place. And the one law is to love the creation with all your heart. And the other law is to love each other. And that don't just mean two-leggeds. I mean, the four-leggeds, the winged ones, the ones that swim, just love them all because they're all our family. We're all breathing the same air. We're all drinking the same water. We're all living on the same rock. We all have a mission to perform. We all have family. I mean, every animal, every tree has a mother, you know. Mother Earth is all of us share this mother who keeps us alive. And so everybody seems to know what to do to keep the sweet dream of life alive, except for humans. We've kind of lost the way for the time being. But pollen, it has a way of bringing you back. And one of the beautiful things about it is half of the contents are still unidentified. At this date, 2026, we still don't know what's in honey. We still don't know what's in pollen. We've identified about half of the contents. The other half is unknown. And the indigenous people, the elders that I've been in contact with, tell me the reason that is because it's never here yet. It's always in the process of arriving because it's light. As we move, the light follows us. And so, and it's never completely here because it's continuously in motion. It's always in motion. And so about half of it's here. The other half will be here. But it's all, so we're consuming the future when we consume bee pollen. And so there's an interaction that goes between the spirit of the person and the spirit of the pollen, where you unite. And once you unite with that spirit, then you also want to carry those two laws with you about loving the creation and loving each other. And then that would give you the characteristics that you need in order to keep the dream alive. Because once that you love the creation and love each other, all of a sudden, uh, integrity, compassion, empathy, forgiveness, mercy, reverence, dignity, all those things come back to town when you honor that process. And so we think that pollen, once upon a time, it was called manna from heaven. It was the ultimate, and it's got more DNA in it than any other food source, as it would happen, and except for possibly seaweed, like wakame and nori and those kinds of foods, kelp. But they are the food chain, so we know what's in them because it's the past. And
Mm.
so, but the only other thing, and it's a little bit more complicated than the seaweed, is the bee pollen. And so, honeybees, they're having a rough time right now, but that's another story. So we really need to pay attention to honeybees because they've been selected by so many organizations around the world as the most important creature on this planet is the honeybees. They carry the future with them, literally. And there's indigenous tribes, especially in Central America and South America, that just honor. I mean, we go into these temples and there's a big cast of a honeybee, over the entrance. Yeah, and same way in Africa and Ethiopia and places like that. They honor two critters. They honor the honeybee and the praying mantis. Yeah. So there's the humans and the interaction between us and all the other life forms on this planet are just marvelous. I would I would strongly suggest traveling and meeting your family around this planet. Yeah, fall in love.
Something, yes, something else that you taught me is that the Blue Ridge region is the oldest mountain chain in the world. I didn't know that before a few years
Well,
ago.
it's one of the oldest. I mean, some of the older, there's some older in Africa and places, but it's in the top 10, as old, millions and millions and millions. And one of the things that's unique about the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Smoky Mountains, it's a mountain chain. It goes all the way up the East Coast. It's the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Smoky Mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, the Poconos, the Catskills, what's the ones up north? The Adirondacks up in Maine. And so, but down here in the Southeast, there's about 2,000 herbs, I'm roughly, that are used by the Native American community. Over 1,800 of them grow in the Blue Ridge Mountains and had their origins in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And then humans for a long time were pollinators because they'd come from all over and we'd meet on these mounds here in the Southeast and trade. And then they'd go home with tap roots and seeds and plants from here. So over the years, these plants got distributed all over the country because of humans. And so now these plants, these medicines can be, grown most anywhere. But a lot of them are prone to be in certain areas because of the weather and because of the soil and so forth. So they say a native plant is indigenous to this area. We're taking plants from China, and bringing them over here, but then a lot of work has to be done to prepare the soil and to keep the alkalinity and the acidity. And it's really almost like a surgical procedure where it's much better to have heirloom varieties of native plants that they just want to grow up through the cracks in the sidewalk. You don't have to do anything. They love this place. They are of this place. That's the strongest medicine. I don't want to take anything away from Ayurvedic medicine and the Chinese medicine, but they're not indigenous to here. And a lot of beautiful plants that we need are. There's probably 10 that I would recommend everybody have, like a medicine cabinet in your backyard of 10 herbs and 10 flowers, 10 things that could help you with all kinds of issues.
What are the
Yeah.
10?
Well, it just depends on the part of the country you live in because, like here in the Southeast, this seems to be the because there's so much foliage here. there's a lot of lung problems, asthma, and emphysema, and things like that. Are they're prone to have those problems here? Where out west, you go to Arizona to heal those kinds of things because we were considered the heart of the mother because we had the medicine. But hearts, we can have heart problems. Out west, it's considered the lungs. So, like Arizona and New Mexico. So, when people have lung problems, they go out there and they go away. They say, "Oh, this I'm healed." It's a different part of the planet. Up in the northwest, up in Oregon and Idaho and places like that, Washington, that's considered the glandular system. So the pineal gland, the pituitary, they're all affected by what happens up there. So this whole place is like a part of a living being that once you get into it, you understand. And the mycelium is like the nervous system that connects it all together. So, and the trees, one of the things I noticed about trees, and I got this from pollen, all over the universe, we can find zinc, we can find lithium, we can find silver and gold, and all these minerals are everywhere. They're on comets, they're in meteors, they're on the planet. But so far, we're the only planet that has trees. Yeah, I think that's amazing. I mean, it's like, what's our most rarest wood? Get out of here. Yeah. And then I said, well, if that's true, then I've not seen people anywhere else either. I mean, we've got all these was that the Webb telescope takes pictures of trillions and trillions of places, and none of them have trees or people on them. And so I'm thinking, what kind of sweet dream are we living in? Or is it just that we can only see that 1%, and that's what we see? But if we could see all these other percentages of light, there may be all kinds of life forms out there that aren't in the third or fourth dimension. They're in the
Hmm.
10th and 12th dimension, whatever. And, I really believe cats and dogs, I mean, sometimes they'll be looking at us and they look over our shoulder, you know what I mean? Or they look into the other room or they hear something or respond to something we can't see. I really believe there's life. They could be walking around with us right now. We just can't see them. But some of our life forms can see them and respond to them. I think I've had clues and signs to that would make me think, well, that could be true. Yeah, but all of this is wrapped up in pollen because of the DNA. See, you want to look in the mirror and think, I look like Laurel every day. The DNA is on target, and the RNA, DNA is the blueprint, and RNA delivers the message to the rest of the body. So you continue to have the same appearance to the rest of us. And if you start getting all humped over, limping, and things like that, it doesn't mean that you're shy of DNA. It just means maybe the RNA is not delivering the message properly to the right place. So it's really important that you eat really good food, that you eat the right food that has good energy and good messages and good, uh, you know, um, knowledge in the. See, you don't eat proteins and carbohydrates. You eat energy and information. The better the energy and the better the information, the more nurtured you feel. Some people can't eat meat. They're vegans and they wouldn't function on a carnivorous diet because they actually feel the pain and the suffering and the angst associated with this animal when this animal perished. Very few animals say, "Yeah, take me out." They don't. Even rabbits will scream at the last moment of life. They hang on to that dear, the breath. And so there's a lot of people that don't want to interfere with that process. Other people seem to ignore that and go someplace else. It's all good. I mean, I'm not trying to make anybody feel wrong. I'm just saying there are differences, and I understand the rationale for all of them, except for 3D meat. I can't get behind that. Over in Germany, they're making 3D meat. It's funny.
Lab grown.
Yeah.
It doesn't resonate with me to eat that.
No,
I
me
feel
either.
like
Yeah.
its vibration would not be helpful to me personally. Maybe
No.
to some, but not to me.
I agree, but I also agree, with this fellow Tesla, where he says if you want to really get underneath the secrets of the universe, look at energy, frequency, and vibrations. And so I tend to do that. Before I even heard of Tesla, my great grandfather told me that. That's one of the reasons we say, we're only going to be here for a little while. So that's one of the reasons we honor our ancestors. Because like the fact that you and I are sitting here talking to each other indicates that we come from a lineage of ancestors who somehow avoided the genocide that's been going on this planet for thousands of years. That's worth celebrating. So that's the angst behind our ceremonies. We honor that fact. And then also that we carry those ancestors inside of us, knowing that one day we too will be an ancestor. So then the legacy becomes critical. What path are we walking? What message are we exempling? What sign are we carrying? What's our life about? What are we doing? And so then, because the story is all that's going to be left, the story of Laurel, what did she do? She was involved in this, that, and the other, and she tried her best to make the world a better place. And, that's what you want, because then that keeps the sweet dream. If you think of life as a dream, which I do, it's an illusion. The only reality I believe in this whole world is love. Everything else is up for grabs. But love stays. And whatever comes and goes, love stays. And so I think that that knowledge of knowing that is what allows us the privilege of feeling, pick the low hanging fruit, sing, dance, make sure the children are safe, love one another, make sure everybody's got a warm bed. So we're all together in this sweet dream. Once upon a time when my great grandfather told me one of these stories, he said when we left this part of the country and had to go out to Oklahoma, one of the biggest concerns from the elders at the time was, what are we going to do with our treasure? Okay, when the Wasichu, when the colonizers heard the word treasure and their lack of properly uh, translating the language, treasure meant gold, or profit or money. But for us, treasure was like something you hold dear to your hearts. It's like a treasure, like that's meaningful. So our treasure was the songs that we
Hmm.
knew, all the plants and all the animals and all the, just this whole area, and water songs, tree songs, bird songs. And that was our treasure. And we said, well, they're destroying everything. They'll destroy our songs. What can we do? How can we keep them safe? And they said, well, we'll put them in it. They said, no, they'll dig them up. We'll hide them in a cave. They'll find them. So for days they talked about. Finally, this one old great grandmother, she said, there's only one place where our treasure will be safe from these people. And they said, what's that? They said, we all got to come together. It really touches my heart every time I think about this. But she said, we all have to come together and come up with the sweetest dream that we can conjure and put our treasure in that dream, because these people live in a nightmare and they'll never have access to our treasure. And if by chance any of them stumble into a sweet dream, they're welcome to a song. I love that story. So I thought about it. That's where everything I have now that I honor and value, I keep it in a sweet dream. And so far, so good. The nightmare has no access to it. Yeah.
Pretty solid plan.
Yeah.
Well, I being from Lookout Mountain in Chattanooga, I love how you describe how they were, what the names actually mean. And I enjoy learning about that. So if you could maybe share about what the Chattahoochee, Chattanooga, Lookout Mountain, how they named things so that they could find each other easily. I love the meanings of the words
Well,
and
I hear
Tanasi and
you.
Tanasi.
It's beautiful. That is really. Once upon a time, it was people would the language was such that there was no nefarious terms. I mean, you couldn't call somebody an idiot. You couldn't say you're stupid. There was no words like that. You couldn't lie, you lying, cheating. You can't say that. There's no words for it. The worst thing you could say to somebody, you could look at him and say, you've been running from wisdom a long time and you've been very successful. That's the worst thing you could say to somebody. So when we're talking to people about where we're going to meet, we could say, well, there is this bend in the river next to a mountain where there's lots of little red rocks. Let's meet there. That turned out to be Chattanooga, Tennessee. Chattanooga. Chattanooga means like little red rocks. Chatta is like the word for red. Nuega is like a particular kind of little rock. And Tenassi means a bend in the river next to a mountain. So you could say Chattanooga, Tennessee. A lot of people say it and they don't even realize they're saying a bend in the river next to a mountain where there's little red stones. See, if you really understood these words, you could fall in love not only with the language, but with the place. Conasauga, I'm on the Conasauga watershed. Conasauga is like a walking in prayer, walking in beauty. I live in a place called the Caheta Wilderness. Caheta. There's lots of variations on these, but I learned this from the people who were here in 1837. And Caheta meant where the earth touches the sky. And so Nantahela was a rhetorical question about, don't the sun look good shining through the trees all day? And so you could say Kusa Wati, the place where the peaceful people gather. Now they just call it Kusawati. The Chattahoochee was the Chattahoochee. That means the red river, red water. It's like, so there's a speculation that once upon a time, way back in the 1800s, maybe, they were crossing down around Coweta. Coweta means a good place to cross. So down on that river, they said Coweta. So maybe some indigenous people and some colonizers were crossing the river and it had just rained. So the Chattahoochee looked really red because before that, all of our people called it the Tiaha, which meant the source of life. That's a better name. So it rained, and so the water turned really red. And so this is speculation. So one of the cowboys, I'll call him, one of the colonizers looked over at the native fella and said, "Boy, this river sure is red." And so maybe he just learned some English and he tried to repeat it. So he looked back at him and goes, Chattahoochee? You know what I mean? Like, you're calling this red water? And he said, "Oh, is that what you guys call it?" And then all of a sudden that became the name of the river. And it was just a conversation. And but that's what happens. And so it's a model. You got to be careful what you talk about because it's going to become the destiny. If you don't like the direction you're headed, you need to change the conversation. And so, yeah, but all these names have meanings, and because that was what Okefenokee means like the ground moves under my feet. You
Good
know,
name.
Okmulgee, which is down around Macon. There's Okmulgee Mountains and the Okmulgee River. Okmulgee means this is where we bathe. And so if you look, this is
What
where the people gather. This is where we bathe. This is this, and this is that. There's no gossip. There's no rumors. No judgment, no criticisms, just ideas, visions, dreams, and solutions. It's a whole different way of conversing with each other.
what does Tallahassee mean?
Well, there's various interpretations of that word, but a lot of people think there's a particular berry that grows down around Tallahassee, and some people say it refers to that, like mulberries on the side of the river. Some people say it means those who live on the other side of the river. So there's kind of like the Miccosukee, people that like to live close to the water. The Seminole means people that go south. because that's what they did. They were up here for a long time, and then they went down to Florida. Interesting, yeah. The Seminoles and the Apaches were the only. I think it's Apaches. I'm pretty sure about the Seminoles. I'm pretty sure, but one, at least I think it was. I don't know if the Chiricahua or the who never surrendered, and that was interesting. I thought, yeah, to the colonizers. So the Seminoles kind of, but it was interesting that what's his name? Oh, Seminole guy. What was his name? Uh, I'll think of it in a minute. Anyway, he created a was it no, this was I'm getting them confused with the Cherokee, I think. Came up with an alphabet. It was the Cherokees that came up with the alphabet, Salagi. And it's funny, but as soon as they announced it, the first letter they received from Washington was an eviction notice. We thought that was kind of funny. In your own language, get out of here. You got 3 days, Wait a minute, I just created a language. I just created it up. Let's do it out in Oklahoma. It's too funny. It's
Mm.
weird. This place. Yeah. So we live in a dream. So it's sweet up here, because like I say, I live in the Cahutta. So I mean, it's a wilderness area. So I go online and I see what's going on, and I go, ah, I turn it off and I sit out on the front porch and I see hawks and eagles and birds and and hummingbirds and butterflies. And I'm thinking, it's beautiful. And so then I'm thinking, well, what's going on out there? What's really happening? And I was thinking, what if everybody could just learn the music? The sound of the stars. You actually take the word universe, which actually translates literally into one song, then it's all singing. The stars are singing, the moon's singing, everybody's singing. And so, and that one song, I think, I'm not clear about this, but I've met a lot of people from India, the Hindus of various Jains and such, and they have a word, I think it's Om. They think or something like that. I could be getting this wrong, but I think they consider that like the cosmic sound. And so there are these songs and other belief systems and other creation stories where the impetus is on the fact that it's all about the music, the sound. Once I read a story one time. This was in Ethiopia. They have a different Bible over there. It's got a lot of. I mean, it's got over 500 books in it. And in that Bible, instead of saying in the beginning was the Word and the Word was God, which I don't find anything wrong with that. But in their book, it said in the beginning was the sound and the sound was good. That seems to reach further into the hearts of men. And and I believe that it's true. If we follow that lineage, that line of thinking, that everything does in fact have a song. How would you feel one day if somebody walked up to you and sang your song to you? Just right off just start singing your song, and you just knew this is my song. How'd you know that? Your heart opens up, and you just feel like that's my song, and my song. We always thought that was how it is when we'd go to the flowers and the different animals, and we'd sing to them their song. It created an instant intimacy. And the more you sing that song, the more intimate you become with life all around. I want to sing my butterfly song. I'm going to sing the hummingbird song. I'm going to sing the honeybee song. I'm going to sing the white oak tree song. I'm going to sing the moss song that hangs from, it's all singing. And how sweet it is. And so I really enjoy that kind of creative intimacy with life in this. And that's why we think of it, I believe, one of the main reasons we think of it as a sweet dream, you know, because we know the music of the dream, the sweet dream.
If a
Yeah.
person listening wants to learn how to sing a song to a plant or an animal, how would they do that? So if a tangible example, if I want to give more gratitude to one of my pine trees in the yard,
Mm.
how do you learn to sing its song?
Well, here's what was suggested to me by the old people in various countries and several tribes was to sit by the water. They said the water remembers everything,
Mm.
especially the moving water, like a like a like a creek or a river. And so it's your intention to sing a particular song to a particular flower or tree or whatever. So this allows you to have a lot of faith. See, and sometimes faith isn't faith until it's all you've got to hang on to, you know. So you're sitting by the river, and it's your heart's intention to learn the song of your choice, whatever it is. I want to sing to the sunflower. I want to sing to this rose. I want to sing to the dandelions. That the water knows the song, and so you trust the process. So you ask the water, and so some people hear it right away. Some people have to sit there, day after day. You know what I mean, until it gets through, because some of the things that are in our minds are like uh, clouding the picture. At once, see, it's kind of like that old saying that my grandfather used to say. A lot of these people don't feel like they've been lied to and fed propaganda simply because they've been lied to and fed propaganda. And so to get the truth in there is going to be difficult because they think what they think is true. And it could be lies. They don't know. They don't they so to break through. Like the other day I was talking to a bunch of people at an organization, and they said, "What do you think the most important thing in life is?" And I said, "Well, once we understand how important it is to with our children, then we have to realize that we kind of owe our lives to 12 inches of topsoil, the fact that it rains. So, how do you honor that?" Well, we think one of the ways is ceremonies, rituals, and rites of passage. And those ceremonies and rituals and rites of passage have a musical accompaniment that goes along with them, like a soundtrack, because we think that's what created their optical illusion in the first place was the song they brought, that now we can see the song, but let's hear it. And so if some of the times we think that the singing is more articulate when we wear certain regalia, for instance, like if we want to sing a song to a deer, maybe we'd wear some deer parts, maybe the antlers or so. Maybe we'd put on something that honored the deer. Now we're going to sing to the deer, and uh, and just put your heart into it, and the deer responds. How could he not? You know what I mean? He's a living, intient being with empathy. Deers are incredible. The medicine of the deer, we think, is gentleness and one-on-one conversations. We think that's what they're best at. If you see a deer, don't invite a crowd. Have a one-on-one with it, and you'll be amazed. I mean, you'll be blown away at what the deer can share with you if you're willing to listen to what's coming to you. But you have to trust the process. You have to have faith in your own system, your own ability to hear that which others can't hear or don't hear, but you hear it. That's kind of like, did you see that? And they go, no, I didn't see that. Well, I saw it. You know what I mean? It's like, what? So this next literary offering that I'm creating right now talks about quantum physics in the terms of the poetry of people who are theoretical physicists and such. But it mixes it, blends it with old shamanistic poetry from medicine people from various countries. And what I've noticed is the medicine people from these countries, whether it's Africa or South America or China or this country, uh, it's like quantum physics is saying the same thing, but they're making it sound like it's science. And when indigenous people, it's like folk tales, these like parables, it's like all these beautiful stories to try to indicate what it is. So, but I think at the heart of the matter, we're all saying the same thing. Life is precious. That's why we do ceremonies. That's why we do rituals. That's why we do rites of passage to honor the process. And one of the animals that reminds us over and over and over of how great this all is like your dog. And my dog, I mean, they celebrate everything. I mean, it's like you want to go outside, celebrate. You know what I mean? You're going to get up a treat. Oh, celebrate. You know what I mean? You get up in the morning, celebrate. I think I want to be like that. Uh, Speaking of that, my grandfather told me a story that I feel real close to. He says, every time, and I've had a lot of people, and even myself recently, one of my dogs passed away. And so it was a sad, sad day. And then I was reminded of a story of my grandfather. He said, every time a dog dies that you've been caring for, it takes a piece of your heart with it when it goes, but it also leaves a piece of its heart with you. So he says, if you stick around long enough and have enough dogs and you lose enough of them, when you take the time to leave the planet, you will have the heart of a dog. and and you'll be loyal and faithful and always glad to see you. You know what I mean? Just like the dogs are, because they're just like perfect examples of like angels without wings.
Mm.
So and the songs, each dogs have a song. I mean, the dog song, is all over the place, and each dog has a different song. A pit bull has a different song than a collie, has a different song than a German shepherd, even though they're similar in some ways. They have different characteristics, and different qualities that you address, just like flowers, the medicine, you asters and marigolds, and, burdock, whatever you're singing to, has a little bit different medicine, a little bit different characteristics, and so it all comes out in the song, in the tone, and sometimes the volume, and the feelings. I mean, you're transferring this feeling that you have, this the soul. So you can say like these some of these plant medicines will actually be akin to having a soulmate. That you're traveling together. It's like, gosh, I wish I'd have met you years ago. You know what I mean? But now that I know you, isn't it great? We're so close. And so it's kind of like that. But it takes an extraordinary medicine person or a person to become a medicine person to actually have that intimacy with all of life, whether it's trees and stones or water, or those that crawl, those that fly, those that, the four-legged, all of them, to have that, say, this is my family, all my relations. You know what I mean? And you mean it. And you know a lot of them songs. My grandfather knew about, I don't know, maybe 300 songs, but my great grandfather knew about 800 songs. So, it's not easy these days to remember these songs and to sing them. This is almost like if you looked at the planet, like even just like in the 70s, we were pretty clear. But now when you see the planet, it looks like we're in a dialysis machine. It's like 80,000 satellites. You know what I mean? It's like from a distance, it's like, what's going on? You know what I mean? All of this stuff. So singing these songs supersedes that illusion, as real as it might seem. Um, the songs carry a bigger picture because it's the universe, you know, experiencing itself,
Mhm.
through these songs. Like you sing the songs to the stars. Like I sang often to Sirius, the dog star. That's our that's our main guy up there from the Muscogee point of view.
Why is
And
that?
it's just a part of the sisters, the Pleiades. They're all connected. The whole story of the cosmos. That's another whole podcast talking about. how we, as Native Americans that I've talked to, I had a prison ministry in the federal prison system for the Native American community for years. And so I talked to various tribes and various people from various tribes, and a lot of differences, but a lot of similarities. And one of the similarities is the sacredness of the relationship with the mother, what a lot of them refer to as the grandmother of all things. And so that seems to be a thread throughout whoever you are, even like in the Yanomami in the Amazon or the Bavinda people in Zimbabwe. They feel that way. Water is precious, children are precious. Like when I met that Maasai Sangoma in Kenya, and we were talking about microorganisms that would help replace topsoil really fast, faster than it is. And I was so excited to meet him. So, because he was spearheading the research, and I was expecting to see a guy in a lab coat, but he comes out and he's all red, and he's got these beautiful regalia, and it's all red. I mean, they look like a sunset, various shades of red. And he goes, and I looked over at my interpreter, and I wasn't quite sure what he said. So, I mean, the feeling was unfamiliar to me. I said, "What did he just say to me?" He said, "He asked you how the children are." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." And he said, "Whatever you tell him, we'll tell him everything he needs to know about you and the place you come from." I said, "Oh man, I want people like that around me all the time." How are your children? Can you imagine a senator or a congressman getting in front of everybody and going, "Is everybody's babies all right? How's your babies?" I mean, anyway, so this is all part and parcel to that idea of having the faith that you need to trust your, connection with your mother, the mother of all things. And I think that connection is strengthened over and over by ceremonies and rituals and rites of passage and exercising these wonderful characteristics. Like this old famous writer once upon a time said, if you feel pain, you're alive. But if you feel others' pain, you're human. So I like that. I mean, I like empathy. I don't think we could make it without it. Compassion and empathy. And I don't think it's a weakness. I think it's a strength. It unites us all. And so that I find that that's a thread throughout all tribal people that I've met in South America, Asia, Africa. Africa is one of my favorite places. It's the only continent that I know of that's in all four hemispheres. It's pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. And it's a whole lot bigger than it looks like on a map. I don't know why they made it look so small, but it's huge. I mean, you could put Europe and, South America in Africa. It's big. So, and my favorite, well, I can't say my favorite. I like a lot of it, but Ethiopia and Zimbabwe. But I like Kenya, but Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe means the stone people who live in stone houses. And I like that because we have the Stone People's Lodge, where we do our ceremonies. So I was thinking, hey, I'm from Zimbabwe. And so when Credo Mutwa, this priest from the Zulu Nation, had introduced us to these people. And so I said, well, by the way, Credo, I said, well, what does Zulu mean? It has to have a meaning. He said, oh, glad you asked. He said, Zulu means people that dance in the center of heaven. I jumped up out of my chair. I said, I'm Zulu. Who don't want to dance in the center of heaven? I said, what a beautiful name. And so these kinds of thrills are all over the place. Once that you exercise your faith in humanity, you get to hear these things. Yeah, I like it.
Mm. You had shared a little bit about your book that's available on Amazon. I can put a link below.
Oh
And
yeah.
you talked a
Well,
little bit about how that relates in with language and how we use language.
well, we consider language to be the fabric of our culture, right? And so since it's a fabric, we think the tighter the weave, the stronger the fabric. So that's why it's important to say what you mean and mean what you say, because the conversation becomes your destiny. And you don't want it just to show up. You want to be ready, I mean, in a good world. So there's one of the impetuses on that articulation is the idea of kindness. So, as my grandmother would say, it's always better to be kind than it is to be right, because right has a way of changing from culture to culture, place to place. But kindness is always relevant. So, she used to say, before you say anything, make sure it's true, make sure it's necessary, and make sure it's kind. If it's not all three, save it, sing a song, dance, do something else.
Similar to the
And,
Marcus Aurelius quote.
oh, really?
You
I
had a
don't think
very,
my grandmother read Marcus Aurelius, but
he said, make sure, what does he say? He said, make sure that it's true, necessary, and there's one other attribute. I don't know that it was kind though, but reminds me of that.
yeah, I'm sure. Well, I don't. I'm not suggesting that my grandmother and great grandfather said things nobody else has ever said, but that was my delivery. I received it from them, and so yeah, so that was the impetus for this book, was to invite people in, and the Zulu people. There's a word called indaba in the Zulu language, means a meaningful conversation about what really matters. And I thought, that's a great idea. And he said, yeah, we do it every day. The village meets every day and has an indaba, and I thought, what a beautiful idea. And there's no concepts, there's no judgment, there's no criticisms, there's no gossip, there's no rumors. We talk about what matters. And so I said, well, what is it that you think really matters, Credo? He said, well, first it's the children. That's the future. So if we want to keep the sweet dream of life alive and well, we have to have the children prepare. So you teach them all these wonderful things. The other thing is to make sure the water stays clean, make sure the water stays pure. So so they start there and think this matters. Topsoil, this matters. You know what I mean? How we treat the earth, this matters. All these things. And so what I was hoping to do with this book, I'm going to call it The Great Remembering, is that we remembered this, that these things matter, and that so we eliminate this noise that's coming through, all these distractions, and actually find our. And one of the things we find that seems to work is when we honor our ancestors. And in the Bible, it says, honor thy mother and father that their days may be long upon the earth, right? Yeah, but your mother could be the earth and your father could be the sky. You know what I mean? Father sky and mother earth. And so it doesn't have to be a physical thing. It could be metaphysical, at the same, and still have just as much relevance. So when I'm asking people to remember these things, remember your place on earth, remember that a lot of people had to have, that's why I say we are the result of thousands of love stories that took place in a little piece of heaven. Somehow our lineage avoided the genocide. Because we're here, we could trace our lineage all the way back to somebody dodging dinosaur feet to get a drink of water. You know what I mean? Because here we are. They've been having babies all this time. There was not a break, or we wouldn't be here. So we think, well, how do you acknowledge that? You celebrate, celebrate. So then life becomes precious, because at the same time, we're not measuring our life by time spent. We're measuring it by distance traveled. So it's the moons, so we measure our time here by the moons, you know, and by the days and nights and moons, and we don't measure it by the clock. My grandfather said time was created so we could know who shows up late. He said, otherwise, space was created so we'd have a place to put our art, and time was created so we'd have a place to put our music. So that's where we keep them when we're not using them. Otherwise, it's irrelevant. The only thing that matters now is our relationship. How intimate can this become? How much love can we possibly share? You know, how much kindness, how much respect and dignity can we bring to the situation? How, if that's your operational mode, we got a we got an opportunity here to continue the sweet dream of life on earth. If we leave that road and we, you know, go amok, we just say whatever we want to say, do whatever we want to do, we got a problem, a real problem. So I was hoping that if we could somehow bring attention back to the idea of how precious our language is, to be able to say what you mean and mean what you say. There's honor and there's respect and dignity. And how can once upon a time, if you walked into a village and you respected the people, you had what do they call, like a skeleton key. You could open any door because you show respect, you show dignity. Love can follow. You might have been in love all along, but some people don't recognize it because they don't know it. But respect is, it's like how many wars were started because somebody felt disrespected. You know what I mean? It's crazy. So all of these characteristics once upon a time were valued. Anymore, I'm not sure what happened, but it seems to lost in the conversation. So what I'm hoping is that people can once again think, um, I want to hit my great grandfather. This was one of his. The world is perfect. There's just a lot of people having a bad conversation. That's what he would say. And then my grandmother would chip in and say, yes, but we can solve all that. What we need to do is raise the level of our personal poetry so that everything we say to each other is a reflection of what we hold dear in our hearts about what it means to be human together, sharing this precious time. Mix that with the fact that we're going 18 miles a second, 68,000 miles a day, 1.3 million miles every day, almost a billion miles. It's crazy. And you think, well, how can we enjoy this amazing flash through space? Kindness, respect, fall in love. Like old Rumi, there's an old Persian poet. Close your eyes, fall in love, stay there. Don't let anything distract you. That all your decisions will be made from a place of love. You won't go wrong. And so these kinds of things I touch on in this book to help. I'm hoping it's a kind of a lighthouse. We think lighthouses don't run all over the island looking for boats to save. They just stand in one place and shine. And so when you see them, you know where some solid ground is that you can stand on for a minute. You won't sink. So I'm hoping that somehow or another this will be like a life raft for a lot of people who feel confused and lost and separate from the language. If you don't be accountable, that's why you must say what you mean and mean what you say from a get-go. And then so somebody might hear, they don't hear what you say, they hear what they hear. But it's kind of like, there's a famous person, I think it was Anais Nin, maybe somebody else, who said, we don't see the world the way it is, we see the world the way we are. You know what I mean? So if you don't have a beautiful, respectful, loving, kind, gentle language, that's not what you're looking at. So somehow or another, I'm hoping that people remember how important the language is as the fabric of the culture. So what you say, if you look at it another way, one of the things I say, okay, once upon a time, we were both 6 months old. We were learning to hold our head up. We were getting ready to start crawling around, We were listening to things. We were looking at things. Well, now we've got tenure. We've been here a long time. But that 6 month old baby didn't go anywhere. It's still in there. So our elders, when I was a young boy, told us, don't go anywhere you wouldn't take your baby. You know what I mean? So we had no adult venues. You know what I mean? Because everybody acknowledged the fact that once upon a time they were a baby. Do you want to go in? Would you let your baby hear these things? Would you let your baby be around people like that? Would you let you know what I mean? You go, wait a minute, I am my baby. You know what I mean? And so some of these things come on home, and then you make your decisions from a different space. So you don't forget that once upon a time you were an infant. Remember that. Remember that once upon a time you were in your mother's womb and listening to her heartbeat, not thinking about food. It just showed up. You know what I mean? And once upon a time you start dancing to the beat of her heart. And maybe you heard the people outside say, the baby's kicking. And then baby's, I'm not kicking, I'm dancing. What are you talking about? You know, and then one day you think to yourself, wow, you know, I didn't have an exit strategy. How am I going to get out of here? I'm already 20 inches long. I already weigh 9 pounds. I can't stay here forever. It's getting pretty tight. And then you see this keyhole of light and you think, God, if that's the only exit, I'm doomed. How am I going to get out of here? And that's the first time you hear the creator's voice. He's someone tell you something now and you can use it. You can use it in this life or you can use it in the next one as well. And you go, the next life? You mean there's life after this? And the creator says, you ain't seen nothing yet. Here's what I want you to do. Move towards the light, keep the faith, and always expect a miracle. And so you go, all right. So you head towards the light, even though you just, in no way I can fit through it. Your faith will make you whole. But who would have guessed that the mother's going to shapeshift in some ways nobody could ever have it imagined? And you're born. And you look back and you think, God, I, do I remember that? Do you remember leaving your mother's womb and coming into life for the first time? It some people do. I remember that. I remember leaving my mother's womb and entering this womb. So now we're in a bigger womb. So it's not triplets, it's not quadruplets, it's 8 billion brothers and sisters. And one of the most incredible commonalities we all have, all 8 billion of us plus, we all have a mother and we all have an expiration date. And nobody really knows what it is. So that mystery coupled with that reality, we're thinking is enough inspiration, aspiration to have us all get along, sing and dance, pick the low hanging fruit, make love. You know what I mean? Tell the truth, be kind, keep this sweet dream alive as long as possible. We even had it figured out that we could do it for 7 generations. If we keep doing this, we can make it last 7 generations. Every generation, 7 more generations. If it lasts 7 generations, please continue. If it doesn't, we don't do it. Don't do it. Only do it if it can last 7 generations. And so all of this came out of this knowledge and this wisdom and this life experience of paying attention and understanding how significant the music is in creating this dream. We believe music was the ultimate creator, the sound of the voice. My grandfather would say we're 7 echoes away from the original voice. And our life is spent trying to reduce those echoes until we can hear the real voice. Or see the real thing, feel the real heart. It's 7 echoes. It's like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. I want to go back to the when the first one came out of the mouth of the baby. Yeah, it's sweet.
Well, for people that have gotten attached to you at this point, because you're just uh, such a lovely human, how do they get in touch with you? And how do people interact with you? And Can you tell them a little bit about how they could engage?
Well, earthkeepers.net is our webpage, earthkeepers.net. Earthkeepers, yes, plural. So I'm hoping there's a bunch of us. And that's the website. And then, of course, my email is bluewolf@earthkeepers.net. And then The Great Remembering is available on our website. It's also available on Amazon. And but I do a lot of traveling, so like in April, I'm going back over to Europe and I do ceremonies over there. I'm hopefully embracing all kinds of tribal villages and peoples and organizations around the world. I have places in Africa, places in Europe, places in Asia, places in South America, where I go and ceremony with various tribes. And there seems to be a lot of people today who want to do these very things, who want to fall in love, who want to create, who feel like compassion is extremely important. That competition is not where it's at. Collaboration is where it's at. We want to be in this together, because the truth is we are in this together. We're all on the same rock. We're all going through space at the same speed. We're all drinking the same water. You know what I mean? So what's the problem here? And so we think that it's people who disregard the truth. I used to think the word ignorant was a bad word, but lately it's been explained to me that the word ignorant basically means avoiding the truth. So there's a lot of that going on today, avoiding the truth or re, re reshaping what you think the truth is to fit whatever it is you're trying to sell. But you basically wind up with a whole lot of sizzle and no bacon. I mean, it's like the packaging means more than the content. And so that's an issue. So
Mhm.
that's why I think it's important to say what you mean and mean what you say. And if the outline, if the characteristics are such that you want to be loving and kind and gentle and compassionate, there's babies in the room. You know what I mean? How important is it to have clean water and 13 inches or 12 inches of topsoil? How important is it to, these things? You re-examine your standards. But like I said, I was talking to that group in Atlanta the other day, and we talked for about an hour, and they pretty much all agreed with what I was saying about small communities and gardens and beehives and get your own chickens, you know what I mean, and be off the grid kind of thing. And they, yeah, but then they said, but Tom, we got one question. I said, what's that? And they said, how are we going to make any money doing that? I said, you didn't hear anything I said. I said, bless your heart. You know what I mean? Um, could you imagine? I mean, when I think about my life, I didn't even see money until I was 11 years old. I mean, it was out there. I just didn't see it because our small area of community, we traded everything. We bartered. We all used the same tractor. If you had peaches and I didn't, you'd give me some. If I had eggs and you didn't, I'd give you some. We just all, is this your shovel? Yeah. Well, can I borrow it? Yeah. Well, here, we'll eat these peaches and I'll use the shovel. You know what I mean? And everybody said, well, I thought I was going to dig holes today, but I guess I'm going to make peach ice cream. You know what I mean? So you're always in this place just to do the sweetest thing possible because there's children in the room. And if the children want to sing and dance, that's what I did. Okay, that reminds me. I was in this little village in Zimbabwe. I'd never been there before. Okay. So I'm waking up the next morning in this strange little place and I hear this thumping sound. It's like boom, boom, boom. And so in my mind, I'm thinking it's a ram pump. They're probably pumping in water with that perpetual pump like a grandfather clock, Choo, choo. But then a few minutes later, I heard psh, 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 boom, 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 boom. And I'm thinking, wait a second, that almost sounds like a band trying to warm up. And then I heard another percussive sound and another percussive sound. And I got to see what this is. So I got dressed and I ran outside. And that's when I could see that the village I was in was shaped like a horseshoe, like a U. I saw the fellow in front of the kraal I was staying in had a huge mortar and pestle. I mean, it was a big old wooden bowl with a big wooden, and he was pounding corn and making it into cornmeal. And the lady in the kraal next to him had a backstrap loom. So you measure the tension by leaning forward or leaning back. And you pass that shuttle back and forth to make and so it made like this sound as she was doing that. And she was doing it in a way that was percussively integrated with the guy that was making the cornmeal. And in front of each cabin or kraal, um, folks were doing stuff to make food and clothes and shoes and tools and whatever they were doing, craft, was percussively in rhythm. And the children of the village were dancing around the well and laughing and singing and dancing, and the people were happy. Everybody was smiling. I said, "You guys do this every day?" They said, "Oh, yeah, this is the way we start the day." And I said, and throughout the day, they sing. When they go out to gather food, they sing. When they gather medicine, they sing. And so it was a beautiful, beautiful reminder of heaven in my world. And that was in Zimbabwe. And that was pretty close to a place called Lake Fandudzi, which is supposed to be the oldest lake in the world. But they say that about everything. The oldest tree, this is the oldest lake, that's the oldest mountain. And it could be, since it's Africa. I mean, who knows? But I thought, to me, that was my dream about what it means to live in a village that's sustainable. And how do you do that? You sing, you laugh, you make a really sweet place for the babies. Everybody's happy, everybody gets along. And but you didn't. None of those people were thinking about retirement or a vacation or what are they going to do with their 401k. All those things that some people do. These people were just, making it through the day, getting ready for tomorrow, making sure the children were happy, making sure everybody had a smile, making sure. I said, I don't know what's right and wrong. I just know that that made my heart sing. And I felt all the way down to the marrow of my bones. That's what we all ought to be doing, enjoying our time here. Because, I mean, once upon a time, when I did hospice work with some people and I helped over 200 people cross over, not a one of them said, "Bring it on." You know what I mean? I said, one old boy said, "I can't believe I was married to the wrong woman for 35 years." And this other guy says, "I don't know, I wanted to be," and everybody, and I thought, well, if I learned anything from these people, if it's in your heart to do something, do not wait, do it. Because I do not want to be laying on a deathbed wishing I'd done something I didn't do that was in my heart to do. And so I can assure you that if it's in your heart to do something, post haste, do it. But if you do things from a place of love and kindness, you wouldn't be laying there thinking those things. You would have realized. So it's a beautiful thing. And so that's the last story on this particular occasion. I want to say that had something to do with that book I wrote called The Great Remembering, because we remember these things, and keeps us in the moment. Because if you think the past is gone, the future's not here yet, all we have is this particular moment. That's the real thing. But one moment leads into the next moment. So in order to build the bridges between the moments, it's the language. That's the fabric that holds these moments together. So I'm thinking about rebranding myself as a monastic wizard. Monastic defined as a monk who is on a particular spiritual path. And a wizard is defined as a person who wants to make ordinary moments seem extraordinary, precious. So I'm on a spiritual path and I want moments to be precious. That's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. Lovely. Delicious
Beautiful.
moments. Hmm.
All right. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for joining in.
Now, thank you for inviting me.